AI analyzing your next X-ray. It's a future full of possibilities, but
Mhm.
um, one big problem keeps coming up: AI making stuff up. And that's a problem anywhere but,
Mhm.
particularly in medical imaging. I mean, we're talking accuracy is critical.
We call these hallucinations. It's
Mm.
where the AI model kind of um, draws conclusions that aren't really based on what's in the image data.
Hmm.
Not really what you want with diagnoses, right?
Today we're doing a deep dive into a new research paper. It's about this AI model, Dr.LLaVA. It's designed to analyze bone marrow images. And apparently that's a field where even small discrepancies can have a big impact on diagnoses. What's really interesting, though, is how Dr.LLaVA tackles these hallucinations. Seems like they've got that head on.
It really is fascinating. See, instead of just relying on eh, recognizing patterns in the images, Dr. LLaVA uses symbolic logic. It
Yeah.
actually mimics how clinicians make decisions. You could think of like,
Mm.
if this, then that. Every step is based on actual clinical knowledge.
So it's like they taught this AI to think like a doctor,
Mhm.
going step by step through the information instead of just spitting out a diagnosis. Pretty cool. How do you even teach an AI model something as complex as medical reasoning?
Well, they use this huge data set of bone marrow images,
Yeah.
and they paired those with these simulated conversations between a doctor and an AI, like giving the model a crash course in diagnostics, but
Yeah.
through realistic back and forth dialogue.
It's more than just the image. It's the whole thought process. That's brilliant.
Right. And they didn't start there. To make sure Dr. LLaVA wasn't just giving random outputs, they developed a whole system to
Yeah.
automatically evaluate the answers, both for accuracy but also
Yeah.
how consistent it was with established clinical reasoning.
That's huge, right? Because needing a human expert to check the AI's work all the time, that's got to be so time consuming and expensive. This is way more efficient. But how do you even measure something like clinical thinking in an AI model?
So they used a combination of these quantitative metrics to look at the correctness of the diagnosis, but also how logically coherent the AI's reasoning process was. It wasn't just, did it get the answer right? It was, did it get the right answer for the right reasons?
Makes sense. Like you wouldn't trust a doctor who couldn't explain their thinking.
Exactly. And that transparency is key for building trust in any AI diagnostic tool.
Okay, so they've taught this AI to think like a doctor, but how well does it actually do in practice?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. They did some rigorous testing with Dr. LLaVA, compared it to other state-of-the-art AI models. And they focused on scenarios that were like real clinical consultations, where context and back and forth conversation is critical.
So not just looking at a single image, but considering the patient's history, other tests, that kind of thing.
Precisely. They wanted to see how Dr. LaVia would perform in a more dynamic setting. And the results were pretty remarkable. But before we get into that, I'm curious, what kind of performance would you expect from a model like this compared to the other AI models? Anything surprise you about this approach so far?
I have to say, just the fact they're trying to teach an AI this level of clinical reasoning is impressive in itself. I'd hope that it would be at least as accurate as the existing models, but with more transparency, obviously. But to actually outperform them, especially in these multi-turn conversations, that would be incredible. That would really be a game changer.
You're right about the game changer part. When they did the tests, Dr. Alvea did better than the other models.
Yeah.
Consistently. And what's really interesting is that it was those multi-turn conversations where it really excelled. It wasn't just looking at the images on their own, but it was actually building a chain of logic, using the previous information, just like a doctor would in a consultation.
It's like you said, it's not just about being right. It's about being right for the right reasons. I feel like that's a big part of building trust.
Exactly. And the paper actually highlighted how Dr. LaVia got much better accuracy in diagnosing the complicated cases, especially the ones where you really need to understand the patient's medical history. But even beyond the numbers, what really impressed me was that it could actually explain its reasoning in a way that was clear and step by step.
So if I'm following you, we're talking on an AI that can analyze medical images really well, but then also tell you how it got there in a way that makes sense to human clinicians. That's wild.
It really is. And it gets even more interesting. You know those simulated Dr. AI conversations they used in the training? Well, the researchers wanted to see how adaptable Dr. LaVia was. Could it handle unexpected questions? Changes in how the information came in.
Like they were throwing it a curveball. Let's see if it could handle it.
Exactly. So imagine this. A doctor asks Dr. LLaVA for their initial thought before seeing any analysis, just based on the patient's history and symptoms. almost like bouncing ideas off a colleague.
Wow, that's tough. Even for experienced doctors. Did it fall apart?
Not even close. Honestly, I was surprised. Even with that limited information, Dr. LLaVA was able to adapt. It gave these really insightful preliminary thoughts. Even the researchers were impressed by how flexible it was.
This is really something. So we've got an AI that can think like a doctor, but then it can also handle these what-if scenarios, the kind that come up all the time in medicine. It's like having this brilliant medical student who has access to tons of information and can analyze it all instantly.
That's a great way to put it. And that ability to adapt and give insights on the fly,
Yeah.
that's going to have a huge impact on how we can use AI in clinical practice. But we have to remember that this research was all about bone marrow analysis. So I'm curious, what do you see as the bigger picture here? Could we use this in other areas of medicine?
I mean, that's the big question, right? This technology has so much potential. Imagine using this for other types of medical imaging, X-rays, CT scans, MRIs. The possibilities are kind of endless. It really feels like this research has opened up this whole new way of thinking about AI in healthcare. It's not about replacing doctors, it's about creating something that can actually work with them, augment what they can do.
I totally agree. And while the focus right now is on bone marrow analysis, I think the real breakthrough is how they did it. Teaching an AI to think like a clinician using logic and reasoning, that has huge implications for any field where you need to look at medical images.
So we could be talking about AI that helps radiologists read mammograms, helps cardiologists, dermatologists.
Exactly. And the benefits are huge. We're talking faster and more accurate diagnoses,
Yeah.
finding diseases earlier. And ultimately, that means better outcomes for patients. Imagine if AI could help doctors catch those little details that might be missed, maybe because they're tired or just overwhelmed with how much data there is.
Like having this extra set of eyes that are always looking, always paying attention. And because Dr.LLaVA can explain what it's thinking, that gives doctors more confidence too.
And it's not just about catching errors or being more efficient. This kind of partnership with AI could really speed up new discoveries too. Think about research. So much of it depends on analyzing medical images. Well, now imagine if you could speed up that analysis, maybe find patterns we wouldn't have seen otherwise.
So it's about more than just individual patients then. It's about medical knowledge as a whole. Pretty amazing. It does make you wonder, though, what's next for this kind of research? How can we make this kind of AI even better and even more useful?
There are a few really interesting directions researchers are looking at. One is to take Dr.LLaVA beyond just one area of medicine. Imagine an AI that understands lots of different specialties, so it could give you these really well-rounded and accurate diagnoses.
Instead of being a specialist, it would be like this amazing generalist, able to connect the dots between different fields.
Exactly. Another exciting area is personalized diagnostics. What if we had AI that could look at your specific medical history, your genetics, your lifestyle, and then give you insights that are tailored just for you?
That would be incredible. We'd be going from this one-size-fits-all approach to healthcare to something that's truly individualized, where AI is helping doctors make the absolute best decisions for each patient. I think the big takeaway here is that AI in healthcare, it's not about replacing doctors. It's about giving them the tools to be even better at what they do, giving them partners.
I completely agree. This research is really just the start of something big.
And as this technology keeps getting better, one thing is for sure, AI is going to transform healthcare as we know it.